Welcome to the LDN Radio Show, brought to you by the LDN Research Trust. I'm your host, Linda Elsiegood. I have an exciting lineup of guest speakers who are LDN experts in their field. We will be discussing low-dose Naltrexone and its many uses in autoimmune diseases, cancers, etc. Thank you for joining us. Today we're joined by Shanika from the United States, who takes LDN for sarcoidosis, sciatic arthritis, and psoriasis. Thank you for joining us today, Shanika.
Hey everyone, thank you for having me.
So could you tell us when you first got sick and your whole journey to where you are today?
Sure. My autoimmune journey started when I was only 9 years old. Um, I started breaking out in these rashes that was finally confirmed that it was psoriasis. And this was around 1999, and there were not a lot of options other than topical treatments available at that time. So I suffered pretty bad with that from head to toe for about 3 years before the biologics for autoimmune disease started to come out on the market. And as soon as I was that was available, I had started those biologics. And within about 4 years of starting those, I started to have signs of joint pain. I was very active because I was just a teenager at that point. And so it was really becoming challenging for me because I felt like my psoriasis was clear, but I was still suffering with the joint pain part of that. And then I kind of got some things under control with the biologics. I changed quite a few times, tried methotrexate early on. Um, so I think by that time I had been on every biologic that had been on the market. And then when I was about 18 to 20 years old, I started to have a lot of neurological symptoms, and we're not really able to get an answer or pinpoint what was going on. And this is when I started to notice the sarcoidosis symptoms set in. Um, and it was a lot of neurological things, shortness of breath, like tightness in my chest, and just went on for years. I'd actually lived out of the country in my 20s as a missionary in the country of Haiti, and I noticed that the change in diet was improving a lot of my symptoms, and so that was really helpful, but I couldn't really pinpoint it until I came back to the United States and my diet changed again back to what it was used to, and things started to flare again. The inflammation obviously got worse. A lot more gluten and inflammatory foods were in my diet. And so that year I actually was pregnant with my daughter. I did really well during pregnancy, which I feel like you hear that a lot with people who suffer from autoimmune problems.
Yes.
And so after that, after her postpartum flared really bad with joint pain, just all over pain. Um, and I think by this point, I had just adjusted to the shortness of breath and didn't even realize that that was really happening. Um, and so after that, it was the year that COVID started. And unfortunately, a few weeks after I got my vaccination, it sparked some kind of inflammation in my body, and began to have a lot of swelling, to the point that I was not able to really stand on my feet and work. I worked in surgery for many, many years, and it's very hard on your body.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got to the point to where I realized, like, what we're doing is not working. I've got to do something because I can't work. I'm, trying to take all this time off from work, keep my job. Fatigue was really, really bad. And I started to suspect that I may have sleep apnea. And so I was able to go and do that testing and find out that I did, but it wasn't very severe, but I definitely had it. But they kept saying that my oxygen levels would drop very low. and they didn't really know why. Well, come to find out later down the road, that was part of the sarcoidosis that we didn't know about. Um, and so I went through a lot of stressful times. I was in nursing school at this point, which gives you a lot of stress, which makes autoimmune things worse. And so things got to the point to where the pain was so bad. Um, I was taking, I think they put me on like Melexicam. I was trying to change my diet because the inflammation and arthritis part was getting so painful. And then I had a spell of vomiting that went on for, I'd say, 6 or 7 weeks. It was just to the point I just couldn't really function. I was getting so dehydrated. So I went to the emergency room. And when you go to the emergency room, especially I feel like in the United States, and you have an autoimmune disease or something that's chronic, I feel like a lot of times when you express pain, they don't always understand because you adjust because you have dealt with pain and chronic pain for so many years. I always felt like it was hard to communicate that effectively because I would think they thought that I should be showing more signs of pain, but it was just I feel like I had adjusted over time to that. And so I was really persistent during that time. I went to the emergency room. I think this was like 2 times in 24 hours because I was just not happy with what they were telling me. I just felt like there was more going on. And I was so glad I did because that's what got me diagnosed with my sarcoidosis finally after this was after 13 years of symptoms. And telling primary cares and all the things about, I know something's not right. Um, I feel like a lot of times you hear doctors say, oh, it's fibromyalgia, but usually there's more to it if you really dig deep. And there's usually another diagnosis that can be found. And a lot of times, if, they're not sure and they can't figure out, they just kind of put you in that category, I feel like, until they can really get you an answer. And that's kind of how I was for several years. And so I was treated with Cymbalta for that pain a lot. Um, and so this ER trip led to a abdominal CT scan that showed nodules in my lungs. And from then on, we were able to do a bronchoscopy with ultrasound to confirm that it was sarcoidosis. And so after that, it's like you get relief because you do have an answer for what you have. Um, but also that disappointment of, okay, I do have an answer, but how am I gonna like get through this? It just pretty much, I felt like it was a time where I knew at that point I had been managing symptoms for so long. I kind of felt like I had that part under control. So it was happiness, but also sadness because I knew that this was going to be my battle and what I was up against. And so after that, they decided to put me on prednisone for 8 months straight. Started at a high dose and was, over time they tapered down. And to be on prednisone, I'm sure many listening have had to be on long-term steroids at some point or another. And it is very hard on your mental health, your physical body. I really, really struggled. I gained, I would say, at least 40 pounds during that 8 month period. And
Yeah.
you're swollen, you're puffy. And so it was just a very, very difficult time. And during this time, because I was having such a difficult time mentally, I decided I had really felt like healthcare was failing me. I felt like no one was really listening. So I said, I'm going to start researching what I can do because what they've given me is not working. I think a lot of times we get these medications and were not really educated on all the side effects. And being a nurse, I knew a lot of side effects of prednisone, but I didn't realize the extent of long-term steroid use. And even seeing it in my job, I started to realize, and it was a reminder that I really needed to find another treatment plan. Um, so I started to research, and I was just looking at Facebook groups of what people were doing with sarcoidosis and how are they, getting symptoms managed and getting, better from this. And I just kept coming across low dose naltrexone over and over again. And so the more that I read into it, the more I became interested in it. And I'm thinking to myself, I've suffered with autoimmune disease for 24 years at this point, and no one's ever told me about this. And so the more I did my research, the more I pumped myself up that I was going to ask my doctor for this to see if he would give it a try. Um, because he had never mentioned it either. My rheumatologist I've been with for several years, and I thought, well, let me just give it a shot and see what he says. And so
Mm-hmm.
he agreed to try the LDN, and I started um, in, I think, April. It's been of 2023, because I had been trying to wean down on the prednisone, but I could not ever stop because of the pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was very determined to get off of that. And so within 2 weeks of being on the 1.5 dose, I was able to completely stop the prednisone. And I was just ecstatic at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it's, you read the side effects, they're, way less of a list. And I was sleeping better. I was like, my energy was already starting to improve. And so as the months went after that, I slowly had started to increase, but I was able to get off of, I was on Lyrica for neuropathy. And that's something that I thought that I would probably be on long term also. And I was just really determined that I was going to get off of these things. And so within 5 months of starting LDN, I was able to get off of prednisone and Lyrica. And that was a big thing for me. To be able to do. And I mean, I just had felt so good. I never had anything control my pain so well. um my fatigue levels were just so much better. Even when you have sleep apnea, you get a CPAP, you know you see some improvement, but my fatigue, even with that, never really got to the level where I could like really function as like a normal person would, working like 40 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
And so that part alone really got me feeling excited about it. And I was still having breakthrough pain a little bit here and there. And so eventually, by the end of that year, I was up to 4.5, and started that. And I feel like within 6 months of being on that dose, which is the dose I'm still currently on, I also started to notice like I was able to lose weight. My CRP inflammation markers went from about 30 down to 6, and they had not moved that much on any other treatment that I had been on. And so that really impressed me. Um, so with a total of a year and a half, I was able to lose 50 pounds. 40 of that was just from the steroid weight that I had gained. And so this was a big deal for me because I felt so much better, and I felt like everything was really getting better. And so, um, after that, I really became a strong advocate for LDN. Um, every time I go to my doctor, that I got to prescribe it, I tell him how much it's helped me, in hopes that he would share this with other people. It's one of those things that to me it's worth it. It's very affordable for me. And just the way that it works for people who have pain to not have to, look at stronger pain medications that would possibly cause addiction. So there's no, fear of that. Um, and really and truly, I don't know that I've had any side effects from it. And so I have just been the biggest cheerleader. I was actually just at I'm a hospice nurse. I was at a patient's house and I was telling someone in their family that has autoimmune disease about LDN and how it's been so life changing. And so since I found it through Facebook or, to start the research, I really always try to encourage people when I see posts about autoimmune disease to really research LDN and give it a try. I think it's just been one of those things that has really turned my life around. I was really not able to work. So it really gave me my life back, and really got me to working, a full-time job again, being able to, do physical activity, and just exercise on a regular basis because the fatigue was better and the pain was so much better.
Well, that is an amazing story. If you could have gone back to yourself when you were desperately ill and couldn't find out any answers, what would you have said to yourself?
I would probably say, don't give up, and to fight for myself and to do my own research. Don't leave it in the hands of other people. Really fight for myself.
I think that's really good advice. We all become our own advocates, I think.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for having shared your story with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Any questions or comments you may have, please email me, Linda, Linda, at ldnrt.org. I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciated your company. Until next time, stay safe and keep well.